Pretty awful, huh? Most people would pass this cartridge over today, but it reminded me a lot of what it was like to rent games a long time ago, back when the internet wasn't readily available to tell you what was good and what wasn't. I'd go down with my parents to the local rental store on a Friday night occasionally, and I'd get to rent a game for the weekend. It was gambling for kids. You either got something great, or you got to enjoy a bad game for a few days. It was really fun when you rented something that you couldn't beat in a weekend, took back, and then rented again a couple weeks later. The whole way home you'd be like, oh boy, I hope somebody didn't delete my save. And of course they did. Thank God for memory cards showing up eventually. This was how you got to experience a wide variety of games back then. And I did. I rented and played a lot of really bad games and a lot of really good ones. I think about what it was like going to the rental store, seeing the rows of games, thinking, okay, I've tried that one was okay, do I want to try something new, or do I want to play something, that I'm experienced with? It was a really good feeling, and it was exciting. We really don't have that anymore, and I miss it. When you were renting games, you had to choose very carefully, because that was the difference between having fun or not. I now realize that there were really only 4 categories of games that you could have rented, each having their own odds of whether or not you'd enjoy what you get. The first category is where you're going to find all of your big names. It's where you're going to find Sonic, Mario, Final Fantasy, Metroid, The Legend of Zelda. These games are big names for a reason. Many people like them, and they are consistently good. This is the category that you can rent games from and be comfortable that you're going to enjoy what you bring home. The second category is sports and racing games. The odds on whether or not you're going to enjoy something rented from this category is going to vary from person to person. If you're somebody who's into sports or racing, you're going to enjoy a sport or racing game a lot more than somebody who isn't. Unless they're getting something irregular like Mutant League Hockey where they can kill skeletons with chainsaws, or NBA Jam where they can play as Bill Clinton doing crazy backflips on fire and landing dunks, they're probably not going to enjoy it nearly as much, if at all. This one's up to you. The third category is licensed games. It's where you're going to see things like Mighty Max, The Incredible Hulk, and Batman. Unfortunately, it's also where you'll see things like Mighty Max, The Incredible Hulk, and Batman. All of these games are going to be based off of things like movies, comics, and cartoons. Things that you're very familiar with, and if the game is attracting your attention, things that you also probably enjoy. So you're going to see a game like Captain America and the Avengers, and you're going to rent that thinking about Captain America and the Avengers, and that's what you want out of that game. Like a knife in your back. Many of these games turned out to be disappointing rentals because they simply didn't let you feel like what you were playing as. You never once felt like you were playing as the Hulk, you felt like you were playing as a large green man. You didn't feel like you were playing an X-Men game, you felt like you were playing a drowning simulator. This isn't what you wanted from these games. There are still many other games, though, that didn't make these mistakes and stayed very true to what they were based on. One week, you'd rent a Spider-Man game that was pretty bad. The next week, you'd rent one that was pretty good. In this category, many of the franchises had multiple games released, developed by multiple studios. So all you had to be willing to do was to keep trying, and eventually you'd find exactly what you were looking for. The final category is everything else. This stuff could be broken down into dozens of smaller categories, but as a kid at a rental store, they just got lumped together as games. You would find a lot of really great stuff here. You were also going to find some really bad stuff here. You could really win big or lose big. And there was everything here. Platformers, Sims, RPGs, you name it. It was just never really that comfortable renting games from here though, since you didn't have the safety net of renting a big name game, one based off of your favorite sport, or something familiar like a comic or cartoon. You were really taking a chance here, but I'd say it was well worth it. To this day, some of my favorite games were ones that I rented from this category a long time ago. The place where I used to rent games has sat empty since it was put out of business by two blockbusters, which is now being put out by companies like Redbox and Netflix. If the store were still around though, it wouldn't be the same. Since today, we have instant access to videos, reviews, and all sorts of discussions about games, so we wouldn't be blindly gambling anymore. Back then, you might not even know what genre the game is before you pop it in. It could have been a platformer, an action game, a beat-em-up, or some Street Fighter clone. You never knew. But it was always exciting to find out.